Hey, good afternoon, everyone. The CIT family. You got your CIT team here, Omar and Alexis, and the Republic team, Carter. And I guess, can you introduce the rest of your team, Carter, and welcome aboard?
Well, it's myself. There are a couple of people listening, but they're not involved in the presentation. So I think Bill's here, and San Giacomo and Margie are here, both in listening mode.
All right. Yep. Well, we're excited, everyone joining us, and you can go ahead and start, Carter. We're excited for next year.
All right, everybody, let's get started. Let's talk about. I hit a little bit on some of what we did in the last webinar because it's important. Those details matter to you for the season, and add a little bit more as well. But first, let's just talk about our program and the details associated with it, what's changed and why. But first, let's meet the team. So first and foremost, here are the characters that you deal with in Tier 2. So everybody in CIT is considered a VIP. And no, we don't just say that. We actually have a box checks to your name. So when you call in and you enter your EFIN, you go through the IVR, you come to the Tier 2 support. Now, for check reissues, IBONs, auth resets, those do go through our exception processing team in StarTech. But in terms of the service levels, we want you all dealing with us. So it's myself, the very silly looking guy on the left, Margie, who's our sales manager, Alan Keeling, who's our service bureau manager, Lo, who's an AE2, she's also bilingual, and Elba, who's a recent addition to our team, although it's been a year, so not that recent, who's bilingual as well. We are the suspect characters that will help you throughout season and help you have the best experience. As far as Republic, a lot of you used us previously, so you're already aware, but we're the largest Kentucky-based bank with $6.5 billion in assets, and we have banking centers across 5 states. So we've been doing this for over 25 years. Interestingly enough, this is also my 25th anniversary, although I've been here the whole time at Republic. And we processed millions of taxpayers' refunds through tens of thousands of tax offices. So this is something that we're very proficient at and have done for a long time. And then we love our taglines. We're here for you today. We're here for you tomorrow. We're committed to offering you, the CIT heroes, our tax products in a fair and responsible manner, and that the consumers, your taxpayers, are presented clear choices in making their decisions. As a stakeholder in the financial services industry, we endeavor to promote integrity throughout our program. And then we love our quotes. We apologize, but I like Republic Bank. Customer service, the information they provide for my company and customer, easy and quick. I think that actually came from a CIT hero as well. So thank you. Okay, so let's talk about our products. And this is going to be kind of a twofold thing because there are some things that changed and there's some very specific reasons as to why they did change. And there's even a couple things in the hopper for you guys, although not something that we could deliver to you this season, in the hopper for next season, and I'll talk about that as well. So first of all, the refund transfer. Now, here's what you guys need to keep in mind that is very unique with CIT, which you all know very well because you signed up for the program, but that makes you very unique in the industry based on what's going on right now. So your refund transfer doesn't cost the taxpayer a dime, right? When you print the bank application, the refund transfer is zero. It just shows your tax prep fee and a doc prep fee if you choose to charge that. And then, of course, if they get a loan, the finance charge that they'll be paying for the loan that they receive, right? So why that's important is a lot of taxpayers are very price sensitive this season, as you know, last season and this season, based on what happened a few seasons ago. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. So, refund transfer is just the ability for you to be paid when they can't afford to pay you upfront. So you submit the return, the IRS reviews within 21 days, assuming it's not PATH Act or after PATH Act, it'll fund. We take out our fees, take out your fees, and then we send a portion of the fees we collected to you. And then the remainder are provided to your taxpayer by a check, card, or direct deposit. So let's get into the nitty gritty of what a lot of you are going to be offering right out of the gates on January 2nd. So as of right now, and I say right now because there is something that I'll pose to you that we're considering for you guys this next season. We have the Easy Advance EA Plus option that's up to $6,000. You pay the same fee for all approved easy advances, regardless of what that is. It's $50. Yes, last year it was $45. This year it's $50. I'll get into that. The loan and fees are paid by the federal and state funding, and we start that on the first day of filing, just the advance, not the pre-act, from when the hub testing starts through February 28th. So like January 17th, I believe. They haven't announced it, but that's based on what it was last year through February 18th. Now, if you offer the pre-act you have to opt in through our website, and that starts on January 2nd and goes through the official start of e-file. Now, if you want, you can opt out when hub testing starts, but if you do, you will only get loan approvals when you have an IRS acknowledgement. So be mindful about opting out from the pre-act if it's something that, you're having a lot of customers continue to come in, assuming that you can just do it post-act, because hub testing is typically isolated of a few days of the week, does not include nights and weekends or Martin Luther King. So, and with the pre-act, checks are being issued like this, or direct deposits or cards. So that starts on January 2nd, goes through the official start of e-file, the pre-act. There is a $35 surcharge per approved pre-act to the year. That is a $5 increase as well. I'll explain here in a minute. So we put checks on the street faster than anybody. One of our claims to fame is we have the highest average, claims to fame. We have the highest average advance amount in the industry and the highest average approval in the industry. And checks hit the streets within minutes. Now, keep in mind, Republic doesn't distinguish between its pre-act and its EA in terms of approval. All of the other banks, they'll do something like, well, if you don't get the pre-act, then we'll reevaluate you for the EA. But what you'll find is their pre-act approval rate is much lower than their easy advance approval rate. And our pre-act approval rate is just about the same as our easy advance because it's the exact same criteria. We don't use the act to determine approval. So we have an extremely high pre-act approval rate compared to the other banks. And let's be honest, if a taxpayer comes into you, they're not going to want to hear, oh, I'm sorry, I can't give you a loan now, but I can later in January. No, when they want a loan, they want it right then. So that's one of the things that our offices like quite a lot. Now, in order to keep our approvals high, the taxpayer is able to choose their loan amount based on eligibility. So I'll show you that when we get to the easy advance slide, how that shows up on the screen. But as I said, same underwriting criteria as the EA, and you must opt in for the pre-act through our tip. If you have any questions about that, let us know at the end. We'll tell you what that is. So as far as our easy advance, these are the amounts. These are the min net refunds, right? So basically what that means is if your taxpayer's refund is $7,000 less fees, then they would be able to choose the $6,000, $4,500, $3,000, $2,000, $1,500, or $500. They would be able to choose any of those amounts. And we counter. So let's say that they choose $4,500 because their net refund is about $5,500, but they only have a 96% probability of funding. They may be countered to 2,000. Let's say their probability of funding is like 92%. They could be countered to 500 or 1,000 because all of our approvals are based on the probability of funding. But we want to approve as many taxpayers as we can, so that's why we do the counters. Now, again, the ERO fee is $50, the pre-act is $35, $5 increase respectively. I'll get to that. Now, one of the other things that's real important Republic does the other banks don't do is our finance charge is fixed. So when the taxpayer is provided the disclosure for the loan, the amount that they see on that document will remain the same as when they fund. The other banks, what they do is that they disclose a finance charge calculated at 25 days, but they'll go all the way up to 90 days for their actual finance charge calculation. So when the taxpayer comes in, they sit down, they'll see that it's going to cost them this. But when they fund, it can actually cost them something different. This causes a lot of issues with EROs and their taxpayers because they don't often read the fine print to see that it calculates on the basis of days. So ours does not change. You won't run into a situation with a disgruntled taxpayer because the amount changed from the time they were approved and the time they funded. One of the other things that's a caveat of being associated with CIT is if you're a first-year office with CIT, you are eligible to receive the EA+. So we can't give you the pre-act in your first year with no experience. If you have experience, then it's certainly eligible to you. But if you're brand new, you can get EA+ through CIT, which is unique. Not everybody does that. And if you want to participate in this program, you must enroll by January 19th. We do make exceptions after that, but it fills up pretty fast. So we try to ensure that we get the most people in the program. Now, anybody's CIT coming late, we're going to think of favorably because we do favors for CIT. So, you know, if you come a little after that, we certainly make exceptions for CIT. That's just our soft deadline. So let's talk about everybody's second most important thing, and that is our receivables assistance program. All right, money has been tight. It's been really tight. The tax industry has gone through a very interesting set of seasons for what's occurred, which I'll talk about a little later. So we have pre-wrap and wrap. Pre-wrap is the pre-season money that you receive in advance of the season. We started sending that out November 7th. We do it through the end of December. And wrap is the in-season money you get for 50% of your tax prep fee when the return's out. Now, we do up to $40,000 per office for the pre-wrap, $500 to $40,000 increments of $500. If you're a brand new office to Republic, we typically stick at the 10%. Renewal offices will go up to 25%, but we typically only will break one tier. So it's to avoid giving too much to offices that may charge much higher fees, and also not hanging yourself out there so far from pre-wrap that your wrap never kicks in. So once funding begins, we withhold 50% of your tax prep fee until February 16th. We try to delay as close to path funding as we can to not eat up your fees. And we do charge 4% versus the 3% we charged last year. I'll explain a little more later. It does take only a minimum of 50 RTs to qualify that is unique to CIT, and it is programmatic. So any place we make an exception anywhere else, we have to actually go push a button to allow someone to apply. If you're a CIT and you did only 50 funded RTs last year, it will actually show up the pre-wrap for you to select from the dropdown. We release it twice a week, Tuesday and Friday now. And we do allow you to select a higher amount in the dropdown than we used to, so you don't have to call in and ask for more. However, there are still some times where, based on your volume and your fees, that dropdown may not be sufficient. If you find that to be the case, opt in, call and say the amount you'd like the exception for, but do not accept the amount approved if not the amount you asked for, and explanations provided as to why it would be different from what you asked for. Because once accepted, the amount that you've been approved for, and it goes out, you cannot make a change. So wrap is basically on the second day of hub testing, we start sending you half your fees. Now, the range is the amount that the office shows in the system is based on their last year's volume. So if you notice that to be incorrect, or you're new to CIT and you do a much higher volume and it says like 25,000 for wrap, feel free to call us and we can up that for you. And you just have to accept the amount, because you don't want to hit your cap without getting it raised if you still continue to need it, because it won't calculate those fees after it until we raise it. Now, you receive 50% of your tax prep fees once the season begins. There's a 3% fee on that, where it used to be 2%. And again, it's delayed closer to the path back funding. New and pre-existing EROs can get wrapped, and the opt-in began November 1st. Now, the thing with wrap that you need to remember, a lot of people are getting a lot more pre-wrap than they did in the previous year. It's fine. We understand. You're basically taking an advance on your money for a lower loan than what you would get at a bank, right? But wrap doesn't kick in until twice the amount of fees are acknowledged from your pre-wrap. So if you got $10,000 in pre-wrap this year versus $4,500 last year, then your wrap won't kick in until you have $20,000 in act fees. That next dollar, you'll get 50 cents. So the more pre-wrap you get, the longer it takes wrap to kick in. Please remember that, because oftentimes people will call and say, well, I'm not getting my wrap yet. And it's because they took out so much more in pre-wrap, they're not calculating the amount they have in act fees before wrap kicks in. All right, let's talk a little bit about the disbursement options, and we'll go through this relatively quick, because if you've been doing this any period of time, you realize what those options are. So we have checks, direct deposit, and that's been prepaid Visa. Very quickly, checks used to be king or queen. Now checks are at the much smaller margin than direct deposits. Direct deposits comprise over 70% of disbursements these past couple seasons. The NetSpend prepaid Visa card is still very popular for those that like to use it. Let's talk a little bit about each. So for the checks, we do the Republic Bank check stock with our logo. You can verify 24/7. You print the check in your office so they can pick it up and they can receive notifications when the checks are ready to print. Keep in mind, if you're a larger office, go into our tick and delay those notifications to give you a chance to print them all off and get them in the file so you don't have taxpayers showing up on the day you're printing 50 checks. Now, here's the fees associated with cashing checks. We also do have a Wells Fargo agreement still for check cashing our checks. Walmart's the most popular. And now our local banks are a good funds agreement. You can actually go type in and it'll print it off with the letter of good funds formatted as opposed to you just printing off a pre-formatted letter. That was added this past season. Direct deposit. Again, this is the one that's most elected now. We say 1 to 4 days, constantly get asked questions on that. It really is just the limitations of the receiving bank. We send out ACHs regularly. It's just if something goes out on a Friday, it may not show up in their account on a Monday, or if there's a holiday to that next day. But we actually send the ACH 1 day prior to the effective date, so it arrives in their account the same day they expect. So like if they go on IRS, where's my refund? And it tells them the date of when they would expect their refund, and it comes through the bank. We try to backdate to have it coincide with that date so they don't call you literally 100 times in 24 hours saying, I don't have my money yet. I don't have my money yet. The IRS says my money's out there, because they don't realize that the Treasury sends the money to us and then we send it to them, right? But, direct deposits are easy. You don't have to see the taxpayer again. Now, if you ever have to mail a return in because you transmitted it, it was rejected, and you can't get it retransmitted for an accepted acknowledgement, please make sure the account and routing numbers are accurate for the bank so we can receive the funds and remove out your fees. Preparers will often make the mistake of putting in the taxpayer's information on the bank application, on the tax return as opposed to the bank application. And then when they have to mail it, and then it'll go directly to them and you won't get paid. So be mindful of that. The NetSpend prepaid Visa. Really, there's one thing about this that's truly exceptional. So we have a revolving account with NetSpend. If you're a taxpayer who gets their money on a NetSpend prepaid Visa card, we are actually loading those funds from the ACH file we received from trade. Sometimes that comes 5 to 6 days earlier. So when we get that ACH file, as long as it's before 4:30 p.m., we will load that card that day, which means that taxpayer will get their refund much, much sooner than they would have otherwise. Unfortunately, we cannot pay fees in advance. We have to wait until the effective date associated with fees. So preparers will often call me, look, my taxpayer got the refund and get my fees. Well, it's because we're loading from the ACH file and we can't do that for fees. So let's talk a little bit about some of the details of our program, and then we'll get into some of the things that are pertinent to you as to why CIT is the best and why some of the changes occur. So we'll go through our ERO support, marketing assistance, online tools, the taxpayer support, the mobile app, and the taxpayer text updates. So ERO support. As you know, most of you have been on the tick. If you go to republicrefund.com, you log in with your EPIN and your password. It's where you order supplies, access your reports. You can view the status of taxpayers. And I highly advise, CIT actually has an excellent forum, but we actually have a lot of EROs use the ERO forum late at night when nobody's available. It's interesting how many people will be communicating on the forum for assistance, even outside of bank product stuff. So do take the time to look at that. And then we are also available, extended hours start January 15th from a call, 866-491-1040. I'm going to give them lever quotes. Very satisfied Republic Bank and receive the highest level of customer service when contacted. Website is also simple but clear. All right, we are getting ready to mail out these packets. So we just went over and visited FCI to make sure the packets were getting put together and get sent out. We got our new program guidelines that you'll be getting and starting to send that out. So in your marketing kit that's sent out in early December, you have your checks, your sample marketing materials, your training materials, your education materials. And like if you're located in a state where there's something required, some things print from software, but for the posters, we actually will send those to you if they're located there. And then we have wall banners and tabletop displays. The big banner that's like the 3x5, those are at cost because they're so big, the all-weather banners, but everything else is free of charge. We do also send out to you usually 3-day mail, but if you'd like something overnighted, you need to let us know as well. Now, we do have some select items in Spanish, and then we kind of bumped up our social media templates for things that people are using on social media because social media is becoming much larger for advertising. So we have images, scripts, and banners that you can use for your website and social media posts and text message scripts. And then we have some print ad templates that you can customize and download. Part of the reason for that is so you don't have to worry about, is my disclaimer language accurate? So I don't have to send it to TRS Advertising to get it approved. Because if you do that, you have to have that submitted by December 16th. And then we're promising now, I think, a 3-day turnaround, as long as we don't get like 3,000 of them in a 24-hour period. And then this, everybody's aware of, although I like to brag, we had something happen this past year that's never happened before. We moved all of our form submissions online. And then there's like a little status showing what's submitted and when, and whether it's in process or completed. But last year, we had same day for issuing checks during peak season. We've never had that happen before. It usually was like in peak, with the amount we were receiving, it would take 2 days, right? We were reissuing all on the same day. Now, keep in mind, that's assuming that the voided check was actually provided, that it was the correct check. If something wasn't provided correctly, then we couldn't reissue it in the same day. But for everything where it was provided with everything that was needed, we reissued all those in the same day in peak season. You do have 24 access to our reporting and customer service. You can check the status of the applications. You do opt in for our programs through our TIC. So pre-wrap, wrap, the pre-ac easy advance, those opt-in buttons are all in the TIC. It's how you order supplies. The training is now available to go get your ARBN for the upcoming year. The webinars there, the tutorials, and then the ERO forum, which I really think is great. I won't read yet another quote to you all, but it speaks for itself. Now, the taxpayer support. Listen, taxpayers will drive you nuts with calls. I know you know this. I take taxpayer calls. They drive me nuts. And it's not when they're asking a question that they legitimately need an answer to. It's when you've given an answer and they think something's changed in 3 hours and they call you back. So use your tools. RepublicTaxpayer.com, a taxpayer can go log in and find out the status of their refund. If you've set up the text messaging, you can do things like, did you get the text message? No? Well, then it's not ready, because sometimes they just lose their minds. So Republic Taxpayer is a good option. IRS website, irs.gov, or where's my refund, and then the 866-581-1040, although it's best to have people try to use the electronic solutions. Now, the mobile app. I like to keep this short and sweet because we do have a lot of people that use the mobile app, but the number one thing I find that people do is they download the mobile app and then they only look at the first screen. So if you go to the App Store or Google Play, it's Republic Bank Tax Refund Solutions. You log in with your password just like you do on the TIC, but it gives you the daily notifications for the federal funding and tax prep fee payments, which is what most people use, and then the estimated checks to print tomorrow. So a lot of preparers will assess what their day is going to look like for the office by just pulling that up and looking at it. Okay, I got 26,000 in fees today. I need to pay some employees or bills. Oh, I'm going to have 136 checks to print. I better get in early, right? But this is useful even if you don't access anything other than the front screen.
Yeah, and I want to echo harder on that. I honestly think everyone should just install it. And everyone got their smartphones. It really does provide a lot of useful info.
Yeah, especially like when you wake up, you're not going to go to your computer and log in. I mean, most people aren't waking up and logging right into Republic anyway. Let's be honest.
It's kind of like checking your email.
But right, people all the time wake up and they flip through their phone until they kind of come to. And if you click that app and it tells you something useful, it's just easy and you don't even have to get out of bed for it, right? If you slept the night before. Tax season sometimes has us miss a lot of sleep.
Predictable.
Yeah. So taxpayer text updates. Over 50% of all of our customers chose this option last year. It's become kind of the go-to for notification. So we'll notify the customer with a text message when their advances are approved, their checks are ready to print, or the direct deposit's been released. So it's a really popular option to save time and resources from the Regular Smart refund calls. And you can delay this message up to 24 hours that the check print confirmations are received. Now, here's the deal though. It's really based on size. If you only have a few checks, it's not a big deal because you can get those printed quickly and out to them. But if you have a really big day, it's good to delay it because there's nothing worse than taxpayers showing up to the office when you've got all these to print and they're right there expecting it right then and not being patient. Now, it depends how close you are to the front of the building and how well you put them through the process, but it happens. So if you go into office info, options, features, text messaging, that's how you can delay. All right. I went through that kind of quickly because I recognize a lot of the names and a lot of you have heard me over the years many times, but there's some important details to visit about the season and part of the reason why some of the things changed. So let's kind of go through that. And CIT has always been the business, but is truly the business this year. And I'll explain a little bit why. So the IRS adjusted the W-4 withholding 3 seasons ago. I'm sure many of you are aware of that now. But it was the same season that the economic impact payments or the stimulus had, so nobody noticed. And then the following season was the advanced child tax credit payments, which also masked the W-4 adjustments. But here's the problem. In 22, 23, this season, everything went back to pre-pandemic levels. There was no stimulus or advanced CDC. And so much is online, taxpayers don't get a pay stub like they used to, right? It's all online. So they're not looking to see that they were getting $62 more a week in their paycheck. They just assumed everything was the same, right? And so when they go to file, they notice that their refund was significantly lower or was eliminated, right? And this really caused a lot of alarm. It definitely had an effect on online filing for the do-it-yourself, the self-file, but it also had an effect on you. You had taxpayers that had always gotten a refund that came in and said, take it out of my refund. You go to calculate their return and they owe $800. And they're literally at a loss because they don't know what to do. They don't have the money and they didn't, they don't have a refund. So the IRS released numbers recently through the 19th of this month. And it shows there are almost 4 million taxpayers that went from a refund due to a bounce due. It's 11% increase. And that several 100,000 taxpayers have a micro refund, which is defined as a refund of $500 or less. And then it's estimated that as many as 10 million taxpayers have not yet filed a return for this season. Now keep in mind, usually the offset has seen an increase in online filing, which is down almost 3% this season. Really, the W-4 adjustment with the IRS guidance 3 years ago to the W-4 adjustment is the primary factor associated with this, okay? So where CIT is really out of the box is that that taxpayers are more price sensitive than they ever been. If any of you been in this business for a time, you remember that taxpayers weren't as prepared with the fees or the fees associated with getting their refund. The refund was so large, they were just in a hurry to get their refund. But price sensitivity is a thing now. Someone's not going to pay $500 of a tax prep fee when their refund's only $500 to get nothing. They'll pay $200 to get $300 or even $300 to get $200, but they are being more conscious about the costs. And so CIT, printing an application that shows there is no cost for a refund transfer and only providing your tax prep fee and a doc prep fee and a potential finance charge with the loan if they are paying a loan back, puts you in a different category to meet the taxpayers' expectations for what's going on in the industry right now. Now, the IRS adjusted the tax tables by about 6.4 to 7% based on inflation. So the standard deduction ranges anywhere from $800 to $1,900 depending on the filing status, and most of the taxpayers are between the 12 and 22%. The actual refund threshold only changed by that margin as well for what holds them in that tax bracket. So there was enough of a change to where it will affect refunds slightly. Some of the refunds that were small will come out of the micro refund to be $1,300, $1,600 that were $500, $400. And some of those balance due will flip to smaller refunds. But there's still going to be a great level of price sensitivity, and there's still going to be a little bit of head scratching because in the absence of legislation or new guidance with the W-4 adjustment, this is pretty much the same season that it was last season. And keep in mind that ADP at Circa said that of their analysis, they did not see a significant amount of taxpayers going in and changing their W-4 withholding, because the big rumor on the street was, taxpayers are going and changing withholding. No, the cost of gas is high. The cost of groceries are high. So that extra $62 a week was going to something they needed. It's not like they had the room to go have more withheld so they get a larger refund. They're using the money that they were receiving. So just be mindful. And that brings me to the doc prep fee. So the doc prep fee, which is available for you to charge, is established at the time of enrollment. You can do $1 to $50 per taxpayer, and it's paid to the office upon funding. The doc prep fee cannot change after the first accepted taxpayer bank application. So like, let's say you go enroll and you do 35. And then you change your mind before season starts and you want to go to 50. That's allowed. But once you've started filing, you can't change the amount. And the main reason why is because you can't have taxpayers charge a different amount for what would otherwise be perceived as a consistent fee, right? So, and if you do intend on charging a doc prep fee, you do need to reach out to CIT, as I believe, Omar, Alexis, it's in your agreement, the terms that there's the CIT convenience fee for the support of the service. So CIT is the reason why you have this doc prep fee as an extra option. So you need to discuss with them the offering of this fee. I'm sure Omar or Alexis can speak to that. And then let me get back to why CIT rocks. So as price sensitivity was one of the taxpayers' biggest concerns this past season, and is likely to be this next season, the CIT model proved to be one of the most successful in the industry. So I deal with millions of taxpayers and tens of thousands of offices. I see it all. And when you compare the total fees charged to taxpayers under CIT versus the traditional bank product marketplace, in many instances, the cost was far less and therefore more attractive to taxpayers. Remember, CIT doesn't have junk fees, right? And with many other softwares, I won't name softwares. There's one other software before the first tax prep fee is charged, and this doesn't include an RT fee. The cost to the taxpayer is $125, right? That's saying that if that taxpayer had left that office and came to you, there's basically $125 of extra funds because those fees aren't charged through CIT. So you, the ERO, your volume was much closer to the year prior than any other EROs, because as fees increased, offices saw a larger percentage of taxpayers either not return or had no choice to pay out of pocket because there was no refund to collect from, or it was not large enough to do so. So the average impact to CIT EROs just for their bank product piece was no larger than 5% versus the traditional bank product marketplace, which EROs saw an impact of 15 to 25%. So you just got to keep in mind that there's a reason why CIT have this service, and it just so happens that it's always been a good service, but now more than ever, it is very attractive to taxpayers based on where the marketplace is. So you're in the right place for the right reason. And then we're on to our questions period. Of course, if you want to reach out to us, you can reach us at the 888-676-2056. I noticed a lot of names on there. Some of you have our direct contact information, email. Margie, Alan, Lowe, and myself, and Elba. Sorry, forget Elba. But what kind of questions do we have? Omar? Alexis?
All right. It looks like one of the first questions, and Before we dive too deep into these, on today's webinar, you will see in a chat box, it'll say Q&A. Anyone who has questions, you guys can go ahead and type those there. We won't be taking any hand raising today, as we've had, a lot of those come in, but they take a little bit more time. But if you have any questions that we can answer in more detail after the webinar, give us a call. But it looks like one of our first questions is, are we offering the December cash program with Republic Bank?
Cherie, that is a great question. So here's what occurred. First of all, CIT was more than willing to provide the December dollars. In fact, they were one of the facilitators, and Alexis and Omar, excuse me. They were one of the first people that I talked to about it to help shape the expectation for what that would look like. The problem is, so the answer to your question is, you will not have it this season. That is not a Republic choice or a CIT choice. Basically, our December dollars program is a loan from December 15th to December 30th that allows you to compete with Jackson Hewitt, Liberty, and H&R Block, which you've all asked for years, of anywhere from $100 to $300. And they pre-qualify for their loan in January. The problem is that the tax software had to break open the 1040 in early to mid-December to send a shell of a 1040 for us to decision the December dollars to then allow you to go back in when they come in with the W-2 or to complete the return, to file the return off to be acknowledged, right? And the big challenge with most of the transmitters was cracking open the 1040 earlier. They needed more time. So what most of the transmitters came back and said is listen, we see the value in it. Our EROs are telling us we have to have it, but we really need more time to ensure we don't break our program to offer this, because no independent has ever offered a December program since the RAL days, really the instant RAL days. It's been years. So hopefully you'll have it this next season. And it also leads into the second thing. I'm also trying to get you guys access to one of our other loan programs based on the, some of the cost constraints. So one of the things I didn't mention earlier, and thank you, sorry, Cherie, I didn't mean to piggyback off what you said, is that part of the reason why we had to raise the RAP and pre-RAP fee by 1% and the pre-AC and the EA surcharge is that the cost of funds went through the roof. So when the interest rate changes, that also has an effect on a bank and lending money, right? So just as an example, we were to loan out $700 million. Last year, that would only cost us about $670,000. This year, it cost us $6.7 million. So it's not about making money. It's about covering the cost of funds. That lending money has become so much more expensive, even for you as the lender, when the interest rates go up so high. So as those come down, it's something we can address. But in order to keep a very high loan and high average loan and not kind of chop your loan down and have taxpayers livid with you, we had to do things like raise the RAP and pre-RAP fee and the pre-AC and EA surcharge, and we couldn't offer the $500,000 at no cost this season. And Cherie, I know that was more than you asked, but we really do hope you have it this next season. We built it precisely for you to be able to compete with Jackson Hewitt, Liberty, and H&R Block, because we have all of Liberty and all of Jackson Hewitt. So that means if a taxpayer comes to you and says they used Liberty last year or Jackson Hewitt, well, they could get this through you, which allows you to take business from them, which would be nice for a change, right? So, please make sure that you are talking with CIT about your interest in that. And I'm sure, the software's heard quite a bit from EROs as well. We would think that they're going to offer it this next season.
All right. And it looks like next question is, when will we receive social media templates and where can we download these?
So you download them from the TIC under the order supplies. There's the schemas for them. But let's see, today is the 28th. It's not this next week. I believe it's the week of the 11th. because they want to ship out the materials to coincide with the release. It could be the week of December 4th. I don't have the specific date right now, but it shouldn't be any later than the week of December 11th. I will double check though, and I'll get back with CIT because we just went over to SEI to make sure they had all the packets getting ready to ship. We didn't get through to the release of the electronic data. That's a great question. Was that Jorge?
All right. And next question is, are we able to email the PowerPoint slides? We are recording this webinar, so probably a couple hours after this, we'll get it posted to both the Facebook group as well as our YouTube group. That way you can go back and review any topics we covered, as well as see the PowerPoint slides. Next question will be, let's see. When will we have the option to get paid prep fees from prior year returns?
That is a great question. Okay. So we did something a little bit interesting this year because of what happened last season. So our rollover actually technically happened today into next season. We have to flush our system to get ready for the upcoming season. If you've already enrolled for the upcoming year, you're going to get them paid as they fund it. If you have not yet enrolled for the upcoming year, we will hold your fees until the end of December. And if you enroll prior to the end of December, then we will pay the fees that we withheld by that time. If you have not enrolled by the end of December, then we have to issue what would otherwise be paid as your fees out to the taxpayer additional to their refund. The reason why is the way our current application is written, we don't have the ability, and the fact that your account number could change from last year, we do not have the ability to pay your fees to an old account. We have to pay them to your current account. Otherwise, we are not allowed to do so. So if you're enrolled currently, you're going to get paid your fees. There's only one. If you haven't, please ensure you enroll prior to the end of December. Now, there's one other thing. If your EFIN changed, please ensure that you indicate when you enroll what the prior EFIN was, so we could do two things. We can merge all the data from your old EFIN to your new EFIN so you don't miss a beat. All your reports still stay in line that you've had for years. And it allows us to know that when funding occurs from your old EFIN, to apply it to the new EFIN, right? That's only if your EFIN's changed. If it hasn't, don't worry about it. That was a great question. Who asked that? That was excellent. Thank you.
All right, let's see. Okay, so this one is a good one as well. Why is the ERO penalized on offering preseason loans due to taxpayers not paying back EA advances? That's beyond our control.
Okay, so we don't penalize you in terms of you having to pay it back. They are non-recourse to the taxpayer, right? So we don't expect them to pay it back either. But you have to think about it in terms of a big picture, right? What we charge for the loan is assuming a loss rate of X, right? So we basically say if an office is below 6% loss and above 85% funding, they can have our pre-act every year and our EA. And the reason for that is we give a little buffer in there. But if your losses are in excess of that, then you start losing the bank money, right? Like a loss rate of 15%, and we're actually upside down with the office. So when you say penalize, the only real penalty that we have is that you won't be able to offer the pre-act or the EA next year. And the reason why, we typically have what's called a 1-year get out of jail free card. So we have offices with CIT that have used us for 10 years. If you have one bad season, we look at that as an outlier, especially if you've had other seasons that weren't, bad. And when I say bad, I just mean high loan loss. It doesn't make it a bad season. It just means they got high loan loss. Then we'll give you the pre-act and EA the following year. Sometimes we even have a situation where it happens more than once, but it's understandable as to you'll identify specifically why, it's only one taxpayer that puts you above, and this is why they didn't fund. We make an exception for that as well. But people don't realize that a 15% loan loss can put the bank upside down 30 grand. And we can't continue to offer a loan to an office when we're upside down. And we used to do it, and we'd end up upside down year after year after year. That's why if we look at it as an outlier, we'll make an exception. But if it's consistently high loan loss, we can't support it. So no, you don't make a decision as to who is going to fund or not. But if in the instance you have taxpayers that significantly don't fund for loans provided, then we just have to mitigate our risk associated with the losses. It's not personal. It's just business.
All right, and let's see. Next question we have is someone saying that they had issues with clients cashing checks at Walmart this past year. Is there anything that they should be doing differently, or are there check cashing rules that you can share as far as going to Walmart?
Okay, so there are two things with Walmart, actually three things. Just like any place, sometimes when the taxpayer goes in, it's the person behind the counter that's a problem, right? We've all dealt with subpar customer service people where we hang up the phone and call back because clearly that person wasn't getting it. It happens at Walmart too. So honestly, to know the specific answer, I'd need to know those taxpayer circumstances, see why. But there really only should ever be a couple legitimate issues as to why you have a check cashing issue at Walmart. One, Walmart uses Certegy to verify checks. If the check number is not correct, it will not verify. It'll have to be manually verified through an agent. And most of the time, the Walmart people won't stay on the phone to say this check could not be verified through the automated system. They hang up. It says, if you stay on the line, we'll put you through an agent. And then they'll go through to manually verify if they can the check, because it can't do it automated through Certegy if the check number doesn't match up, right? If it was misprinted. The other thing is the check amount. Walmart has a max check amount that they'll cash. If it's in excess of that, then they won't cash it. They'd have to go to a check casher, or we would do a split, right? But we have a check cashing agreement with Walmart. Every once in a while, in the very beginning of the season, you get that hard-nosed person at Walmart that thinks they know everything. You have to ask to speak to the manager. I mean, you wouldn't do this, they would, but have to speak to the manager, and they'd have to go refer to their check cashing agreement to see that they do cash checks from Republic, because we're so large. After a few days, they've seen a ton of them. But in those first couple of days when they first see them, they don't remember they got them last year. They may, well, we don't cash Republic checks. We're a reputable organization that puts millions of checks out there on the street. So absent knowing the specific circumstances, they shouldn't have any problem at Walmart, short of, the other one is they can't provide an ID. Like they'll have to provide ID, and they have to verify information that's on the check. And let's say that their social was wrong. They won't verify it correctly, or it's fraudulent, which clearly wouldn't be your issue. If they're having a problem, they're clearly a good client. But all those things serve as outliers. We, by and large, don't have issues with Walmart, but you will always end up with, from time to time, a subpar Walmart customer service rep too. I mean, I've dealt with it myself. It's short of knowing the taxpayers, that's the best answer I can provide. I'm happy to look them up for you though and see if I can see.
All right, and let's see. We did have a question. If you are looking to add a secondary location to your CIT account, will they also receive marketing materials and checks later on? Anytime you enroll a new EFIN with Republic Bank, you will get a separate shipment go out to that office location. So as soon as you're ready to get that second location set up, just let us know. Next question is going to be, are there any updates to reports? I had a challenge pulling prior year reports and information showing. Not sure if that's just a current issue or not.
If you could let me know whenever we do updates to our system, we try to do them late, but knowing you guys, sometimes you work late. There are times where we're doing updates where we'll have a derogatory effect not where it changes the data, but there's data missing on a report just during the update. But in terms of intermittent issues, you need to let us know and we'll find out what the issue is. We don't really need to update our reports anymore with any additional data. We felt like we got that kind of clean, and we now provide the prior year fee status summary that shows your prior year fee fundings versus the current taxpayer fee status, where it's just current year. So we don't have a mixed and mingled together anymore, where you have to go to the fee deposit with history and run it in 7 days and it's all manual. But whenever you have that, please let someone at the 888-676-2056 know, and we'll find out what's occurred, because it's usually around the time that we're trying to apply an update. But absent that, we would want to try to resolve your situation by running the report internally, getting it to you immediately, and then finding out what the issue was and you having run the report. Is there any chance you could put in a comment what the name of the report was?
No, she didn't. We'll see if she sends that in here in a second.
Prior year report. So it's when she's trying to. So we only do 2 years back. We can't. It's so much data. We can't do more than 2 years back on the system. We'll have to run more than 2 years back for you here. But outside of that, yeah. If it's prior year fees, that's something we just built a report for called the prior year fee status fee status summary that we just built. So that's a new report, because preparers were like, listen, I don't want to charge them for last year if they already funded. So can you give me a report that shows what I was paid for from last year? So we built that report and put it out there. These are good questions.
Well, and that actually looks to be towards the end of our questions. I know that there were a couple other questions that came in that were more specific to your individual situation. So I will have someone here at CIT reach out to you if we didn't get to your question during this webinar today. The only other thing is, if you guys have not bank enrolled yet, we are sending out emails for you to complete your bank enrollment. That's going to be done through TaxWise and get sent directly over to Republic. So keep an eye out on your email if you haven't completed that yet. And then any additional questions, feel free to reach out to us. Again, our number is 904-900-3099.
One last thing I did want to say, keep in mind, a lot of the softwares have raised their transmitter fees and non-bank product e-file fees. CIT has remained committed to offering the product to you at the lowest cost. I posted this in the CIT message board. I get calls from you guys sometimes asking questions about others. From where I'm sitting and knowing what I know, the grass is not greener. We saw CIT have the most success of preparers as opposed to the more traditional marketplace this past year, and we absolutely believe that to be the case this upcoming season as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Carter. That's a good point to bring across. And we got a lot of exciting changes for this year and some products that I want to discuss with you guys as well. So keep an eye to your email. We're excited to share some of those with you. I think we answered all the questions.
Yep, we are looking good.
Okay, thank you everyone for joining us. We're gonna record this and post it on YouTube if you need to show it to your staff. And if you have more questions, just shoot us an email. We'll get back with you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Carter and team.